So I'm sure you guys know both Benjamin Dixon and Kyle Kulinski. I don't know if Ben posts anything to his YouTube anymore. I think he just does his podcast, which gets a lot of listens, and I think he just posts over on his Patreon page. So he used to post on YouTube. I don't know if he does anymore. He's a progressive commentator, and then of course Kyle Kulinski is also a progressive commentator. They have had some differences, as you guys have probably seen. Basically, Ben had done a whole podcast episode. I don't know if he had just kept it for patrons or if it was just in podcast format and not on YouTube. It certainly wasn't on YouTube, but I don't know if it was just on podcast to everybody or if it was just for patrons. But he just went after and just sort of lit off on Kyle Kulinski over his comments about the culture war and stuff and that specific topic. So Ben has an interesting take here. He says, progressive commentators still telling you that identity politics don't matter are going to help you lose this election. This concludes my TED Talk. So there's quite a few things here to talk about. Okay, so I'm going to try to be as nuanced as possible because I have a very nuanced take on this. This is very much so aimed at Kyle Kulinski, and that's obviously evidenced by him literally doing an entire podcast episode just going after Kyle Kulinski about this very topic. He has a view where it's sort of this, he's a progressive who supports Bernie. I think he supports Bernie still, although he's been doing some defenses of Warren, so I'm not sure what's up with that. But he's a, progressive who also has the sort of identity politics angle of it, which a lot of people, I think, have. So Kyle Kulinski is somebody who doesn't do identity politics, doesn't really talk about any of that kind of stuff anymore. He used to do that back in the day, but I guess he changed his mind on that or something. I'm not really sure. But when it comes to my take on this, okay, is that I think that there is a mix of both that needs to be had. And here's the thing, okay? I think that the worst form of identity politics, and this is the one that I think has zero use whatsoever, is when you are solely choosing the person because of their identity. That I think is extremely, extremely problematic. So choosing Hillary over Bernie because she's a woman and Bernie's a man, I think that that's extremely problematic and a very stupid way to choose your candidate. I think it's really dumb. And it's illogical, completely, because you should look at the totality of the candidate. Now, with that being said, it's also important. Like, identity is something that's important. There is something about having black representation, or representation of any group for that matter. For example, if you go back and watch the Anita Hill hearings, not only is there was not a single woman on the panel that was questioning her, I think every single person was a white man. So no, I don't think there were even any minority men. That one may be off, but I'm pretty sure there were none. But there were certainly no women. Not a single woman on the panel questioning Anita Hill. So when you look at something like that, it's like, okay, there's not really legit representation, and there's no way to truly get the experience without having someone who comes from that background. And so I totally understand that. I think that representation is something that's important. And I think, having like a first black president is good. But when you have a first black president who's Barack Obama, it's really not that cool. Because Barack Obama kind of sucked as a president. He wasn't very good. He was mediocre at best, is how I would put it. So, it has to be a totality of all things. But I think we can have both at the same time. I think that, it's cool that Bernie Sanders has Faiz Shakir as his campaign manager. He's the first ever, I believe, Muslim campaign manager. That's really cool. And all of that kind of stuff, And all of that kind of stuff is very important. And it's not something that you should just completely throw away. We shouldn't be sort of as a reaction to the dumb identity politics played by people like Hillary supporters. That doesn't mean we just completely throw away the sort of significance and importance of identity. And also, there's a lot of things that are sort of race-based problems that exist in the United States. When you talk about specifically, wow, that was weird, specifically the black community, obviously they have a very unique history. And so, when you're talking about generational wealth and redlining from the past and just all that kind of stuff, slavery, obviously, Jim Crow after that, black codes, and then you talk about generational wealth and housing being the determining factor of whether or not someone is successful in life. And then you look at that and it's kind of like, okay, this is clearly a disadvantaged community. And so you have to cater to a community like that in a more specific way, in a more specialized way. So you have to have those kinds of things. And that's all very, very important stuff. So we should not throw that kind of thing to the side. And then, when it comes to whether or not that it's going to lose elections, maybe. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure about that, to be quite frank with you. I don't know if that's going to lose elections. I certainly think that having more representation can lead to more electoral success, and the Bernie Sanders campaign has taken that on. So certainly they have taken that as a priority, as you guys see with Faiz Shakir and all of the different people in his, campaign, Ro Khanna, and, all of these different people. So he's taken that as a big thing. Also, what I want to say is that, when it comes to the economic anxiety thing and, the racism of Trump supporters and Trump himself, here's the thing we have to grapple with, okay? And I've actually flip-flopped on this a couple times. When I first started getting into politics, I had a thought that, there are a lot of Republicans who are racist, Not all Republicans are racist, but that a good amount of them are. Then I changed my mind, and now I'm back to the other way again. Looking at the Trump administration and just the Trump presidency and him getting elected has really changed my scope on these things, obviously. But here's the thing you have to understand. There's a lot of fucking racist Republicans. There's some racist Democrats, too. Look at Joe Biden, for example. But Republicans, dude, there's a lot. I mean, you're talking about Donald Trump is racist as fuck, obviously. If you guys remember Mark Meadows in that questioning of Michael Cohen, where he basically brings up that he has a black nephew. And then they go back and find a video of him saying they're gonna send back Obama to Kenya. Like, bruh, these people are fucking racist. You're talking about Donald Trump and his, go back to your countries type shit, and his whole thing of, the Central Park 5 and all of this. And he's very obviously a racist. But I'm talking about, like, a lot of the Republicans you look at, that's simply how they are. It's like a picture of Mitch McConnell next to a Confederate flag. So when you're talking about that, and you're talking about Trump supporters, a lot of them are racist. Now, are all of them racist? No, but I think the best case scenario would kind of be, they are people who supported a racist, which is still fucking horrible, and Trump is a monster, and if you voted for him, that's really fucked up, obviously. But it is true that a lot of those people are racist, and that's why they voted for him. That is true. Now, it's also true that, it's good electoral strategy to essentially go the way Bernie has in trying to pull those people to vote for him. That's also a good way to do it. And I think that's what's going to end up winning. But those are my thoughts on this issue. I think that there seems to be a bit of a divide between Ben and Kyle Kulinski on this issue. Kyle doesn't seem to think of identity politics even in the slightest. But Ben has it, does believe in that to a certain extent. So I just gave you all my thoughts on this. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts down below. Let me know.